Good evening. Good evening to one and all. I am Dr. Sanjay Chaudhary from the Medical Affairs team of Sun Pharma. It gives me an immense pleasure to extend you all a very warm welcome on behalf of Sun Pharma for today's medical webinar on the diagnosis and management of allergic rhinitis. We'll also look in details about the intermittent and persistent allergic rhinitis. Before we start, let me give a short overview on the Sankalp initiative, as this webinar is part of this. Sankalp initiative by Sun Pharma has been created for handling lifestyle diseases like diabetes, hypertension, asthma, and gastrointestinal disorders. The word Sankalp comes from the Hindi word Sankalp, which means pledge or for patient care. The promise of Sankalp programs helps you be the first but also the best in dealing with patients with lifestyle disorders. Through Sankalp initiative, we aim to partner with doctors in the endeavor to offer quality healthcare. We will be regularly updating on global accredited CME modules, Indian and global therapy expert videos, recent articles from the best scientific journals, interactive webinars, etc. via calls, emails, SMSs, and WhatsApp, which will help manage the patients better. So as promised, today we begin our second webinar, which is related to the respiratory therapy area. And the topic for today's session is diagnosis and management of allergic rhinitis, which will also include the intermittent and persistent allergic rhinitis. And I'm very fortunate to introduce our guest speaker for today's talk, Dr. Agam Vora sir, who is a renowned respiratory therapy care expert with extensive experience in the field of rhinitis. Before I hand over the session to our speaker today, Dr. Agam Vora sir, I'll just give a short overview or the introduction of Dr. Agam Vora sir. Sir is a honorary consultant, chest physician at Karuna Hospital, Manav Kalyan Kendra and Suchak Hospital. Sir is a chest physician and medical director of Advanced Multi-Speciality Hospital at Vile Parle, Mumbai. Sir is also in charge of the Vora Clinic at the Borivali West. He is the assistant honorary chest physician and in charge of Department of Chest and TB at the R.N. Cooper Municipal General Hospital. He has more than 20 plus years of experience in the field of pulmonology. Sir has also been the Honorary General Secretary of Academy of Advanced Medical Education. He is a trustee of Malad Medical Association and the President of Geriatric Society of India. Sir is also the Assistant Editor of Journal of Association of Physicians of India, JAPI, and also the patron of Tuberculosis Association of India, Northeast Chapter. Sir is also a recipient of multiple fellowships like Fellowship of Association of College of Chest Physicians, Indian Academy of Health Education, Geriatric Society of India, API, and National College of Chest Physicians. So without taking much time, I hand over the session to Dr. Agam Vora sir. But before that, there is a short request to all the audience who have joined in for this webinar. As you can see on your screen, there would be a feedback survey option, which you can submit it at the end of the session based on your experience of today's webinar. Now I hand over the session to Dr. Agam Vora sir. Over to you, sir.
Good evening, everybody, and thanks, Sanjay, for those nice words of introduction. Sanjay, now I know why I'm putting on so much of weight. You introduce me so well. You make me feel so special. And I think whenever I'm being introduced, you must come and introduce me. So many things you spoke about me. Well, as he's introduced, I'm a chest physician, and being chest physician, my core area of interest would be allergy and tuberculosis. Allergy, trust me, is a huge problem, and it is neglected, underreported, and hence underdiagnosed. Obviously, if it is underreported and underdiagnosed, it's going to be poorly managed, poorly treated. Though most of the patients may have milder symptoms, but a lot of these patients suffer a lot. It affects their quality of life. It affects their work. It affects, and in today's time, when you sneeze, when you cough, it creates a lot of fear in patients' mind, a lot of fear in society by and large. And hence there is more and more awareness about cough, about allergy, about sneezing. And there cannot be any better time than this to talk about the recent advances or the current understanding about allergy and allergy disorders. So I must thank Sun Pharma for giving me this opportunity. I must compliment them for their initiative, this Sankalp initiative that they've taken up. The idea is to reach out to you, the primary healthcare physicians, and to create or to give a platform where we can discuss these common issues that come up in private practice. With those words, thank you very much, and we shall begin with the presentation. May I? Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for those nice words of introduction. And I must thank Sun Pharma for giving me this opportunity to be here in front of you. I'm impressed by their initiative, that is Sankalp, where they've decided during these difficult times to reach out to you all, a frontline warrior or the primary care physicians or the first point of contact between suffering mankind and healthcare, family physicians. The topic for today's discussion is diagnosis and management of allergic rhinitis. And at the outset, I must express my sincere thanks to my teacher, Professor, Director Dr. K.C. Mohanty. Dr. Mohanty not only taught me respiratory medicine, but also made me worth here stand in front of him. I must thank my family. I must thank all my patients who gave me a chance to learn my respiratory medicine and share a few experiences that I've gained over the last 2 decades. My association with Sun Pharmaceutical is about a decade and a half old, and I'm very much fortunate to be part of a lot of their initiatives, and we've done a lot of scientific programs together, and I can confidently say whenever there is a scientific discussion, Sun Pharma could be a sure partner. I must thank Akash, who's the brain behind this program, and he thought about this topic and he gave me a chance to be here in front of you. Allergic rhinitis is a common problem. Allergy per se is a common problem. We had difficult last almost 2 years now. I would say 18 to 20 months since we started actively seeing COVID cases in our country. A new virus suddenly came as a big surprise in the last year's December. And in a small city name, the city name which I had not even heard of, had a small outbreak of cases which in no time spread to cover the entire globe. From a small outbreak, in no time it became a pandemic. And then we were introduced to this new virus called SARS-CoV-2. We were pushed against wall. We did not know anything about this virus. We tried everything possible to save the mankind. We tried old drugs, we tried new drugs, we tried steroids, we tried biologics. And now we have vaccines, and we thought with vaccination, the herd immunity would be at better level and we would be able to control this menace of COVID-19, but there emerged a new variant. And we are yet to learn how this new variant, this Omicron, is going to behave. We have lost almost 5 lakhs lives in the fight against COVID in our country, which are documented COVID deaths. We've almost lost similar number of patients due to COVID-related complications, and we had pulmonary fibrosis, respiratory failure, pulmonary hypertension, thromboembolic episodes, the multi-organ dysfunction, the cytokine storms, the pneumothorax, pneumomediastinum, and the list is endless. Not only mortality, morbidity is huge. A lot of these patients who suffered from COVID are living now with so-called long COVID syndrome. If I make very rough calculations in last, say 20 months odd, we've lost almost 1 life every 2 minutes because of COVID. And again, somewhere around 1 life every 2 minutes because of COVID-related complications. So if I club that, it would be almost 1 death every minute because of COVID or COVID-related complications. Luckily, Omicron is still at the edge, it's still at the horizon. We do not know how we are going to face Omicron, what kind of problem it's going to create for our country, but most of us believe that Omicron may turn out to be a milder variant. It may escape protection from the available cocktail antibody. It may escape the protection from whatever vaccination we have. But till then, currently definitely COVID cases are on decline. We don't have those kind of cases that we saw in Delta wave. We do not have that kind of mortality that we had a couple of months earlier. And with that, life is slowly getting back to normal. All our asthma patients, COPD patients, allergy patients who were by and large homebound or isolated are now coming out, they are now moving, and with that, pollution levels is on rise. With that, environmental factors again have started playing that role. And yes, those suffering allergy patients are resurfacing. So your offices are now getting busier with those allergy-related issues, allergic rhinitis, bronchial asthma. And as I generally talk about it, allergy could manifest with 5 systems. It could manifest with allergic rhinitis. It could manifest with asthma. It could manifest with skin allergy. It could manifest with ocular allergies. You have that redness of eyes and running of eyes. And it can present with GI allergies, that is your food allergies related. In our country, I believe food allergy is not very common, but when it comes to skin allergies or nose allergies or asthma, allergic asthma, we have a huge problem. And today we are going to be discussing about allergic rhinitis, how to diagnose, what is allergic rhinitis, what is acute, what is chronic, what is mild, moderate, severe variants, and how do we treat this allergic rhinitis. Allow me to present a case which I'm sure everybody here has seen in their practice. Not very uncommon for us to see a middle-aged adult, say 35 years old women, with a history of nasal congestion for most of the days of year, right from her teenage. That means going on for years together. She has frequent nasal discharge, which is generally clear whitish mucoid, but at times turns yellowish greenish, at times turns thick. Congestion is worst in certain part of the year, maybe late summer, maybe early fall, maybe in spring times it is increased, and there is increased episodes of nasal stuffiness, nasal itching, that is blockage and itching, and there is sneezing. With running of nose, there may be associated cough. A couple of years ago, she also had episodes of shortness of breath with wheezing, and that time she had a severe nasal congestion. Luckily, that episode settled down with the conventional treatment which was offered to her by her family physician. She did not have much of ocular symptoms. Over-the-counter treatment, you know that most of these patients end up taking over-the-counter treatment of antihistaminic helped her. There is nasal decongestion which happens with that, but she gets the rebound recongestions. And now she has a 6-year-old son. He also has similar symptoms. And everybody here clearly understands that this is a case of allergic rhinitis. She has mild concomitant asthma. Luckily, she suffered only once, but majority of the patient may have underlying asthma which is not diagnosed. Luckily, she does not have skin-related allergy. Luckily, she does not have ocular allergy. But she has given this allergy to her child. And as you know, 30% of the children of asthmatic parents would have allergy disorders. That means they could have asthma. So your one parent is asthmatic or both the parents are asthmatic, 30 to 40% chances that their child could have asthma. You will agree that when it comes to allergic disease, it is highly underdiagnosed, it is highly underreported. Most of your patients would tell you, this is going on for months together. They have kind of learned to live with it. They've kind of accepted the disease, and that creates more confusion because these patients are not presenting at the right time. You and me don't get the chance to investigate at the right time. You and me don't get chance to put them at the right kind of treatment, as they end up taking this treatment from over the counter or from the pharmacy, or they kind of duplicate the prescription which you have given them for earlier episodic treatment, and hence these patients are not picked up. Unless you diagnose allergic disorders, you cannot offer them the right kind of treatment. The kind of allergy workup must not only be focused to nose, but this patient must be examined or evaluated in detail to find out associated other system allergic involvement they have. With that, let me tell you the definition that currently we have for allergic rhinitis. So allergic rhinitis is defined as a symptomatic disorder of nose induced by allergen exposure, which is generally a IgE mediated inflammation of nasal membrane. So allergic rhinitis is not infective rhinitis. It is not vasomotor rhinitis. So you have a variety of causes which lead to running of nose, which lead to nasal blockage, which may be infection related, which may be neurological, which may be various other causes. But allergic rhinitis is the disorder of nose which is following allergy exposure, and it is generally IgE mediated. And the 4 symptoms that you have because of this is rhinorrhea. There will be a running of nose, there will be watery discharge, nasal obstruction, they get stuffiness, nasal blockage, nasal itching, and sneezing. These are the 4 symptoms of allergic rhinitis. How would you look at allergic rhinitis? We have current way of understanding allergic rhinitis as either it is intermittent or persistent. So you have a episodic or you have a regular, chronic, frequently occurring. It may be mild or it may be moderate to severe. So these are 4 variants. So based on duration and frequency of symptom, you could call it as intermittent or persistent. So intermittent would be if you have, say, less than 4 days a week for less than 4 weeks. 1 month sick count is by and large labeled as intermittent. And when you have it more than 4 days per week and more than 4 weeks, this is a persistent problem. That means for most of the days of the week and for most of the weeks when patients suffer, it is going to be persistent. And when it happens for less than 4 days, less than a month, you call it as intermittent. And based on the severity, whether it is mild, moderate, or severe, depending on the functional disability it leads to, if it does not impair your sleep, if it does not come in the way of your daily activity, you may continue doing your activities, you may continue to work, you may continue to play, you may continue to go to school, and it doesn't bother you. It is there, but doesn't bother you. You don't have to stop your work. It is called mild. And moderate to severe is anyway, whenever it is disturbing your quality of life, it is called moderate to severe. So it may impair your sleep. It may impair your daily activities. You may not be able to participate to sports. You may not be able to go to school. You may not be able to go to work. And even if you're working, you're compelled to work, you cannot concentrate on your work because of these symptoms. You are dealing with a moderate to severe allergic rhinitis. So intermittent, persistent, mild, moderate to severe. This is again a different picture of the same things when symptom duration is less than 4 weeks, and when you're suffering for less number of days per week, it would be intermittent. And when it is continuously throughout the year, when it is most of the days of week, most of the weeks when you're suffering, it is persistent. Mild is it is not disturbing your quality of life. You kind of managing it with that, it's mild. And when it really disturbs your life, disturbs your sleep, disturbs your work, it is called moderate to severe. Trust me, across the country and across the globe, people are suffering with allergic rhinitis. And I had a beautiful video. I'm sorry, I'm not playing that video now. But allergy does not affect humans. You see allergy affecting even animals. You will see n number of videos on your YouTube when your cat is sneezing, or when a dog is sneezing and coughing. And when I have a funny video of kangaroo sneezing. I have a cub, the lion babies sneezing. And this is the prevalence of disease. Unluckily, we don't have very authentic studies. We don't have enough data about prevalence of allergic-related disorder in our country. But we believe that when it comes to allergic rhinitis, almost 30% of Indians suffer from allergic rhinitis. If you look at allergic rhinoconjunctivitis, in the sense patients who have associated ocular involvement, you will see significant of them have it, especially in early childhood. When it comes to asthma, this was a very interesting study which looked at the prevalence of asthma and incidence of allergic rhinitis. So when you have a lower prevalence of asthma, the countries where there is asthma less, they have associated less allergic rhinitis, and the places where there is more asthma, you have more allergic rhinitis. And I'm yet to see a patient of asthma who does not have allergic rhinitis. Trust me, all these patients will have associated allergic rhinitis and bronchial asthma. The severity could be different. I believe it is the spectrum of same allergic disorders. On one hand, you have a phenotype where it is predominantly allergic rhinitis, and on the other hand, you have a phenotype which is predominantly allergic asthma. But allergic asthma and allergic rhinitis work hand in hand. Your patient may have such mild allergic rhinitis that he may not complain about it. Or he may kind of accept it and he may be more worried about asthma that he has. Or on the other hand, patient may have so much of nasal stuffiness and nasal obstruction and nasal discharge that he may not worry much about asthma, or he may not be aware of underlying asthma. And hence, it is only when you investigate them in detail, when you talk to them in detail, when you get their detailed history, you realize that all these patients of allergic asthma has associated allergic rhinitis, and all these patients of allergic rhinitis have associated asthma, though the severity could be different. And there is a growing understanding. For last 2 decades, I think we have come to understand that allergic rhinitis and asthma are part of the same disease because it is a united airway. Your upper airway from lower airway is not separate. And when we look at the pathophysiology, we realize they share the same inflammation. Over time, we realize their structure is the same. The anatomical structure is the same. The response to allergen is the same. Whenever you have allergy happening here, you will see the inflammatory mediators in system. You will see inflammatory mediators in lung as well. And hence, allergy of nose cannot keep lung separate. You will have some or the other involvement of lung happening in this allergic disorder. The nose is a protector of lower airway. It has the ability to clean, warm and humidify air. It does the job of air conditioning. And it plays an important role in innate and immune defense mechanism. Progression of inflammation from upper airway, you have any trouble here, it spills over to your lower airway. In the sense, the inflammation is carried from upper to lower airway by the ways of continuous mucosal propagation of allergy, or it may be due to postnasal drip and the systemic circulation. And whenever you have allergic rhinitis, I was talking to you about, the lower airway resistance is increased after nasal inhalation of, say, stimuli. You have a cold air, or you have a hot air, or a dry air which is going through nose. And if it stimulates your nasal reflexes, you may have inflammation going on in your lower airways as well. When I talk about impact of allergic rhinitis on asthma, say imagine a situation where your patient does not have predominant allergic rhinitis, or your patient is unaware of allergic rhinitis, and you have only to deal with asthma. Vice versa, you have a patient who's got allergic rhinitis for which is symptomatic, he suffers more. The direct medical cost could be higher in patients who have got comorbidities. The poor performance at work, poor concentration in school, the absenteeism and lost productivity is more when you have concomitant disease. Allergic rhinitis and sinusitis are associated with more severe asthma exacerbation and more exacerbation. In the sense, the number of exacerbations are also more, and the severity of each exacerbation is more, provided this asthmatic has got associated upper airway involvement. The allergens are common. You have those environmental pollutants, you have food, you have the sea products, you have peanuts, you have beets, you have those pet denders, you have pollens, you have house dust mites. All the allergen which are common for asthma are the same allergen which has a potential to trigger allergy in the nose. This looks very busy slide, but I'm sure everybody here remembers the pathophysiology of the changes which occur at a cellular level. On repeated exposure to allergen, say if you are exposed to a particular allergen, there will be IgE antibodies which are formed in the body. Now with subsequent exposure, the IgE antibody kind of multiplies and you have an army of IgE antibodies. These IgE antibodies would bind to mast cells. IgE antibodies are those Y-shaped. It has a long arm and a short arm and a base. So with this base, it will bind to mast cell. So you have two IgE antibodies like this bound to mast cells. Whenever there is re-exposure to this allergen comes and binds to these two short arms and the circuit is complete. So you have a mast cell, two IgEs, one and allergen binds to it, and it brings about destruction of mast cell. So whenever mast cell degranulates, there are certain pre-formed inflammatory markers like inflammatory mediators like your histamine. So histamine is immediately released and it brings about immediate allergic reaction. Over time, they enter into the further pathway of inflammation, and if you remember that lipooxygenase and cyclooxygenase pathways, and eventually it leads to formation of leukotrienes. So you have leukotriene formation. These leukotrienes were earlier known as the slow releasing substances of anaphylaxis. If you remember, when we were students, we were told it was SRAs. Now SRAs are known as leukotrienes. So various leukotrienes. These leukotrienes bring about the second phase of inflammation. You will be surprised to know this leukotrienes is 1,000 times more potent than histamine. it takes some time for leukotrienes to form, and they form second phase of inflammation, and the second phase is even more stronger than the first phase. So you have this two things going on where it leads to hypercirculation, the blockage, and it will lead to rhinorrhea, the inflammation with leaky nose. And over time, when you get this recurrent phenomenon happening, recurrent episodes like this happening, it leads to a lot of inflammatory changes which are irreversible. So it leads to irreversible mucosal hypertrophy. And when it comes to lower airway, it leads to there is something called as structural changes in the airway called as airway remodeling. So it leads to airway remodeling, and here it leads to hypertrophy of mucosa. And when this changes occur, that means when this changes of allergic rhinitis occurred multiple times, so it happens and leads to structural changes, then the response to treatment may not be as good. So you may come across your patients of asthma who responded earlier beautifully to the line of treatment that you offered. But now when you put them on treatment, now when you put them on Montelukast, now when you put them on levocetirizine, now when you put them on their inhaler, the response is not good. And you realize from fully reversible, it has become partially reversible. That means their airways have remodeled. Similarly, for allergic rhinitis, you see that nasal stuffiness and the irritation does not go over time. That means you have not treated them adequate at the right time, and now they've gone into structural changes with a lot of hypertrophy. So rhinorrhea, sneezing, nasal obstruction, itching are the symptoms, and you would do diagnostic test. What test would you do? You would do general tests to rule out other associated diseases. Of course, you would do CBC, look at eosinophils, you would do sugars, etc. You would do sinus X-rays and look at sinusitis. And then you would do specific IgE test. You may do general IgE test, which will give you idea about overall atopic status, and you may do allergen-specific IgE test. You may even do allergen-specific IgE test in blood, and now you may also do allergy testing there to find out the relation of the allergen to this allergic rhinitis. Though somehow it is not very popular to do allergy testing in clinical practice, at least in chest practice, at least in family physician practice. A lot of ENT colleagues have probably found it more useful and are doing regular allergy testing. I would at this stage reserve allergy testing only for those patients who do not respond to my conventional line of treatment. Everybody here again would agree that with the available treatment, you have those fantastic combinations of intranasal corticosteroids and Montelukast and antihistaminics like levocetirizine. And when you use them in the right combination, most of your patient would do well. So whenever your patient is not doing well with the conventional treatment and you have ruled out other possibilities, that means there is no bacterial infection, there is no structural damage to sinuses, there is no polyp, etc. And if after that patient continues to suffer, you may subject them to allergy testing. And if you can find out avoidable allergen, best. If you cannot, then maybe allergen-specific immunotherapy may have a role. And this is a kind of 4 components of treatment for allergic rhinitis. Its commonest is, which is very easily forgotten and missed, is allergen avoidance. Many times we do not pay enough attention to those pets in the house. I will tell you a story of, I'm Jain Gujju, living in Mumbai, and on one fine day, children wanted to give a different gift on my wife's birthday. So we bought a pair of kakadu. This happened for the first time in my family. We don't have birds in the family, and this kakadu pair was bought. Slowly, my daughter started getting cough. None of us realized. We have 5 doctors in family. Me, my wife, my father, my brother, my brother's wife. And my father is asthmatic. Luckily, me and my brother are not. And my daughter started coughing. And as you know, with family, with multiple doctors in family, children are treated at multiple levels with multiple treatment, and whatever latest sample you have, you end up putting them on that treatment. And she kind of took those syrups, was better, not better. And it went on for 2 or 3 months. One day my granny got upset and said, "Why don't you investigate? Your daughter's coughing like this." And unluckily, during that time, one of the kakadu died. And my granny lost temper. She said, "No, I don't want this bird in my house." And then we had to release the other kakadu. In 2 weeks' time, my daughter's cough completely vanished. And retrospectively, when we realized it was a bird related this, because she was anyway having that, my father is asthmatic, so maybe atopic or allergic trail she had, and with this exposure to birds, she got this cough. Luckily, till now, she does not have any other allergy episodes. But then, yes, in presence of appropriate allergen, since she has the tendency to develop asthma, she could develop asthma. So, allergen avoidance is most common. Smoking, indoor pollutions, and this kind of pets in the house are common triggers and common allergens one needs to avoid. Another common allergen is your dermatophagoids, those bed bugs, which probably gets ignored. Then comes the patient education. One must educate them about the allergic rhinitis, because patient will have to learn to live with it. It's not going to be a one-time affair. Patient will have this kind of episodes month after month, year after year for the rest of their life. And comes pharmacotherapy, and a part of pharmacotherapy could be allergen-specific immunotherapy. As I said, would be reserved only for a small proportion of patients. One must put adequate efforts to identify allergen in appropriate setting. It may be occupational allergen, it may be indoor allergen, it may be the habits patient has. A lot of youngsters have a habit of using a lot of deodorant, a lot of fragrances. They use a lot of cosmetics which could give them allergy. They may use a lot of hair coloring, etc. gives them allergy. There are bed bugs, and there are special measures available. There are special cushions available. There are special coverings available, which would help you in controlling these bed bugs to some extent. Maintaining temperature and humidity may add to better control of allergy. Cross ventilations, and in appropriate setting, the proper ventilations, proper air purification, etc. may also help you. If you have carpets in the house, removing those carpets would bring about a good improvement in management of allergy. So you will educate your patients about it. You will take care of allergy, and then allergen, and then comes the pharmacotherapy. So pharmacotherapy, you have three options. One is your age-old friend, that is steroids. And in most of the situations, intranasal steroid will be good enough. The second option is antihistaminics. Everybody here has used antihistaminics, and antihistaminics have helped you in tiding over those crises. And then comes the third group of drugs, that is leukotriene receptor antagonist. So antihistaminics, we have conventional antihistaminics and a newer generation antihistaminics called as second generation antihistaminics. So compared to first generation, second generation has got far better advantages, a hell lot of advantages. So by and large, you don't use first generation antihistaminics at all, for the simple reason that there are hardly any side effects. So your second generation has got less sedation. Your first generation, I'm sure you would agree, the minute you give them those conventional first generation, they would go to sleep. Here, sedation is taken care of. Plus, it does not have any central side effects. Lack of alertness, concentrations, etc. Would be better with second generation antihistaminic than with first generation. They are far more safe in the sense they don't have cardiac toxicity. You don't have to be worried about those QTC intervals, etc. And they have relatively longer duration of action. And hence, in most of the situation, with once daily preparation, we will be able to control allergy for a longer duration. And hence, when it comes to antihistaminics, your choice would be, of course, a second generation antihistaminics. And when you think about second generation antihistaminics, you have levocetirizine, you have desloratadine, you have fexofenadine, you have the newer molecule like bilastine, etc. And you could choose whichever out of it. But by and large, the most commonly used second generation antihistaminic is levocetirizine. Leukotriene receptor antagonist, I said, you have those release of leukotrienes. You have allergen coming, binding into Igs, bringing about destruction of mast cell. Mast cell will have a pre-formed histamine, which is released immediately, and your antihistaminic would work on it. And then you have a slow-releasing substance of anaphylaxis, which are now called as leukotrienes, and you have a leukotriene receptor antagonist. So these leukotrienes would go and bind to a leukotriene receptor, but you have a drug like say montelukast, which will come and bind on it and does not allow the leukotrienes to bind on it. They have a structural similarity to leukotriene, and hence it would bind with the receptor. So once it is bound to it, leukotrienes would not be able to act, and that would lead to reduction in the inflammation. So whatever vasodilatation, whatever increased permeability, whatever cellular infiltrations you expect with the second phase of inflammation can be bound by the leukotriene receptor antagonist. So we have only one molecule in this category, and that is your montelukast. I think we had a molecule earlier called zafirlukast, which is not available anymore because of side effects and because of drug interaction. We don't use that. And montelukast is the one which we've been using for almost, I think 2003, 2004, it came to India. So we've been using it for almost 18, 19 years, and we've got excellent experience of using it. Comes nasal steroids. They are extremely useful, would look after all aspects of allergy, and you have a preparation which can safely be given once daily, and the nasal route, that means they will not have any systemic side effects. So we spoke about it. You have intermittent, or you have persistent, you have mild, or you have moderate to severe, and based on that you would decide a pharmacotherapy. The pharmacotherapy first line, by and large, most of the practitioner prefer antihistaminic. So whenever you have a mild intermittent symptom, when patient does not suffer much, he's able to cope up with his work, all you would do is give them a newer generation antihistaminic, that is a levocetirizine or similar products, and would take care of most of the symptoms. If patient has got more symptoms, or if patient has got kind of a longer lasting symptoms, maybe a persistent one, you would think about steroids, and preference should be intranasal corticosteroids. Obviously, if you use systemic corticosteroid, you're going to get that effect, but at the cost of side effects, because the tablet would go into system and will be distributed across the body, will bring about its effect on various other organs which you do not want. And you have a preparation which can act locally and can take care of all symptoms that are there with allergic rhinitis. One would definitely prefer that. In situations where a patient has got severe allergic reaction, or if patient has got associated asthma exacerbation, or patient has got associated severe urticarial or skin allergy, there may be some sense in giving them systemic steroid, maybe injectable or oral. But when it comes to long-term treatment of allergic rhinitis, intranasal corticosteroid would score over other preparations of steroids. Then comes the leukotriene receptor antagonist. The advantage is oral, once daily, extremely useful, safe, effective, and we have years of experience which say that even if you use it for years together, does not lead to any major side effect. You have decongestants available. Oxymetazoline is the commonly used decongestant, but it leads to rebound congestions, and hence it is not very popular. But yes, in acute situations when patient has got a lot of stuffiness, you could add the decongestant to the line of treatment. Anticholinergic like ipratropium is available in inhalation form, and now you have the other newer anticholinergic drugs also like glycopyrrolate, which is available for inhalation form. You have it. I think in time to come we are getting even the nasal preparation, in which being anticholinergic would reduce the secretion formation. So whenever there is more of rhinorrhea, you could think about using it. And then comes nasal saline, which is not much popular, but yes, a lot of family physicians, a lot of doctors prefer it for a regular use. So by and large, when it comes to the first line treatment for allergy, especially when it is allergic rhinitis, a long-standing one, intranasal corticosteroids scores over the other preparation. But whenever you have episodic symptom, like look at this slide, whenever episodic symptom, oral or nasal antihistamine would be enough. You may combine it with oral antihistaminics, you may combine with nasal decongestant, but in most of the situation, your oral second generation antihistaminic would be good enough. If you have mild symptoms which are seasonal or perennial, in the sense you have mild symptoms but which is continuously going on, nasal steroids would be all that is required. By and large, nasal steroid would do good, but if your patient is not under good symptomatic relief with intranasal corticosteroid, your next combination would be antihistaminic. I generally start these patients on combination of montelukast with levocetirizine, or for that matter, any other antihistaminic of your preference. Give them once a day of this preparation in the evening, and give them intranasal corticosteroid once a day, depending on the preparation that you're using. There are some steroid which needs to be given twice daily. There are some steroid which can be given once a day, intranasal one. You would choose accordingly and put them on that. I have a habit of putting them on fluticasone, which is once a day, which is once a day preparation in the morning, and in the evening I would give them one montelukast with levocetirizine or similar preparation. And when patient has got more symptoms, you may consider this therapy. You may even consider intranasal antihistaminics, and you may consider this patient for systemic steroids. You may even consider these patients of allergen-specific immunotherapy. You may even consider these patients for biologics. So you have now a variety of options available. There are drugs available like omalizumab, which is approved for the cases of allergic rhinitis when it comes to allergic rhinitis treatment with bronchial asthma. The current available evidence or current available guideline that we have is the AREA guideline, and that talks about allergic rhinitis and its impact on asthma. The recent one says that for initial treatment of nasal symptoms in seasonal allergic rhinitis for elderly should be monotherapy with intranasal corticosteroid, and you don't need anything beyond this. But yes, if patient is symptomatic, you may give them add-on therapy, and add-on therapy could be with leukotriene receptor antagonist with antihistaminic. So in patient with seasonal allergic rhinitis, either combination of intranasal corticosteroids or antihistaminic would be enough. And if patient does not have adequate relief, you will combine them with this antihistaminic and leukotriene receptor antagonist, that is montelukast, and you will give them intranasal corticosteroids. Again, in patients with perennial allergic rhinitis, intranasal corticosteroid alone would do good, but if required, you can always combine them with the combination of montelukast and levocetirizine. This is if you have untreated patients. See, VAS analog is a scoring system where patients. It is an analog scoring system. So when patient, depending on the self-reporting, would tell you about severity of disease, depending on how they perceive, you would agree that perception could be different. In some patient with even milder symptom that you feel clinically, they may be suffering more. And in some patient with severe, he may be, having running of nose in front of you and would sneeze 10 times in front of you. When you ask them, they say they may not, they don't suffer much. So when you put it on the visual analog score, and if patient has got low score, you could initiate with any treatment that you prefer. You could initiate treatment with antihistaminic. You could initiate treatment with montelukast antihistaminic. You can initiate treatment with intranasal corticosteroid. If this patient has got VAS score which is higher, that means the patient is suffering more, it may be wiser to initiate this patient on combination therapy, and you may choose between intranasal corticosteroid with intranasal antihistaminic or intranasal corticosteroids with montelukast and levocetirizine combination, kind of combination. You would reassess them at the end of 3 days. If patient is doing well, you would continue that treatment. If patient has got complete absence of symptoms, you can actually think of stepping down. And when patient score is high and is still not doing well, you would investigate further. You would look at the compliance of this patient and would think about escalating treatment where you may have combination all. Along with that, you may even consider systemic corticosteroid. You may even consider role of anticholinergic drug. And if required, you may consider this patient after careful evaluation. Look at the underlying uncontrolled disease. He may be having underlying asthma, which is not controlled. He may be having underlying sinusitis, which is not controlled. And if you address that, patient may have symptomatic improvement. If patient does not improve, even after careful evaluation, you may evaluate this patient for biologics. So this is patient who presents to you naive for the first time, and patient who's treated, who's already on some treatment comes to you and his score is low. You would think about de-escalating treatment to stopping this treatment. And if patient comes to you with not improving to line of treatment, you would do add-on. And the add-on would be, as I said, montelukast levocetirizine combination with intranasal corticosteroid. So leukotrienes in rhinitis today, as we understand, leukotrienes play important role, and it leads to symptomatic worsening. Mainly the congestion, mainly the stuffiness is responsible because of leukotrienes. And they release variety of leukotrienes. As I showed, it was 5,000 times as potent as histamine in increasing nasal resistance. And the production of leukotriene forms an important step in pathophysiology of allergic rhinitis and development of symptoms. And it is quite justified, quite rational to think about combining these two as combination therapy of montelukast with antihistaminic display some advantages when you give monotherapy alone. That means you put them on montelukast alone or antihistaminics alone, and when you put them on combination, there are sure advantages. If it is taken together, especially in a pill, a single pill, reduces symptoms of allergic rhinitis, improves the nasal patency, improves quality of life. There is global treatment evaluation more effective. As pre-treatment, they reduce in-season symptoms more significant than montelukast levocetirizine used individually. So when you give them together, they have symptomatic improvement, they have improvement in the markers of inflammation, and they have improvement in the quality of life. Histamine, as I said, is already there in the mast cell. So it is already formed, preformed. With the lysis of cell, it is immediately released, and your antihistaminic would work immediately on it, bringing about earlier improvement. And leukotrienes are slowly formed. So you have a next step of inflammation. So suppose your treatment does not completely take care at the first stage. Suppose there is some escape and inflammation begins. This drug would act at a second level. So you have two molecules in one pill which act at two different levels, ensuring that inflammation is under check. So whenever they are used in treatment, blockage and inhibition of these two mediators may provide additional benefit compared to the single mediator. So here it is only blocking histamine, here it is only blocking leukotriene receptors, and here you have drug which blocks both at the same time, would bring about definite advantage if there is a escape of this inflammation happening with any one drug. To combine this leukotriene receptor and antihistaminic not only constitutes a good therapeutic option in allergic rhinitis patients who do not tolerate or do not benefit with intranasal corticosteroid. So it is not only for them who did not feel better with intranasal corticosteroids, or it may be for some group of patients you are not able to use intranasal corticosteroids for whatever reason. There may be infection, there may be medicamentosa, allergic, the structural changes in the nasal mucosa. But this combination in a single pharmaceutical form may improve patients' compliance. And whatever said and done, in spite of years of experience, in spite of years of explaining patients, there are still a lot of patients who would prefer tablets over nasal sprays. And you know that this may not be the right treatment. The first line treatment should be intranasal corticosteroids, but you may be forced to put them on tablets, and this gives you good option. Second, whenever you have uncontrolled asthma, and then my patient is on multiple aerosols therapy, if I have to take care of additional inflammation, I would be more comfortable using one tablet which would take care of systemic inflammation, because now this inflammation is in the entire airway. And there is a lot of preference of giving Montelukast, levocetirizine in that situation as well. So you have a patient of uncontrolled asthma and allergic rhinitis, you put them on intranasal corticosteroid, you put them on aerosol with beta agonist and a steroid combination. And if patients continues to be symptomatic, our next logical step would be to put him on Montelukast with antihistaminic. And as patient improves, you may probably de-escalate treatment as per the need. So I would summarize by saying that allergic rhinitis affects productivity and quality of life in both children and adults. It frequently coexists with other allergic disorders like asthma. And trust me, all your asthmatics will have allergic rhinitis. And if you investigate, you will realize that yes, they may have it to some extent and may not be really symptomatic for it, but it does coexist. Greater improvement in allergic rhinitis symptoms occur with FDC of Montelukast and antihistaminic like levocetirizine than with Montelukast alone. So whenever you have it in combination pill, it may have advantage. You may have to be aware that there may be different formulation which may not be able to give you adequate bioavailability of both drugs because of compatibility issues, and there are special technologies required for combining these two molecules together as their pHs are different. And I'm sure once you familiarize with good brands, you will see the difference yourself. Levocetirizine provided better satisfaction, tolerability than most of these antihistaminics. A lot of you may argue that with newer molecule like Bilastine, is this statement true? And to some extent, treatment is true because we don't have as good an experience of using Bilastine as we have with levocetirizine. We've been using levocetirizine for, I'm sure, for more than 2 decades in active practice, and I've realized levocetirizine is a good antihistaminic. It is more effective than fexofenadine at and later than 22 hours after drug intake. And to my mind, it gives you good 24 hours coverage. Meta-analysis indicate that levocetirizine offers better improvement in nasal symptoms than other antihistaminics, which probably was reviewed in 2015. I would end my presentation by saying that sneezers should not be left to wheeze, and wheezers should not be left to sneeze. In the sense, in every patient of allergic rhinitis, look for asthma. In every patient of asthma, look for allergic rhinitis. And unless you treat both these systems together, your patient will not have adequate clinical relief. Thank you very much for your patient hearing. And if there are any questions, if there are any difference of opinion, if there are any comments, I would love to, take up that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Agam Vora, sir, for the complete and elaborate presentation on the allergic rhinitis, including its types, diagnosis, management, and various causes. So it was a complete, it was a well-presented presentation on allergic rhinitis. Along with that, so we have received more than 70 questions related to it. So of course, we won't be able to take all of them, but we try to address as much as possible. So the first question that we have received is, is there a relationship between the gastric symptoms and allergic rhinitis?
Gastric symptoms and allergic rhinitis. Interesting.
Yeah.
There is no direct relation in the sense allergy causing gastritis is not very common. Okay. Not in fact known. You may get allergic food allergies. You may have heard of milk allergy. You may have heard of gluten allergy. You may have heard of certain foods may give you allergy, but acidity and allergy does not have a common association. Many times we've seen asthma patient. Asthma may exacerbate with refluxes. So if patient has got acidity and if patient develops, reflux syndrome, the asthma may get worse. And with worsening asthma, there may be worsening of allergic rhinitis. So only this association I can think of. Otherwise, allergy and gastritis may not have direct association, but it may have a treatment implication. Suppose if you're putting your patients on treatment which may aggravate gastritis, say you're putting your patients on steroids, say you're putting your patients on antibiotic, they may have episodic infective exacerbations. You may have to keep those things in mind. Thank you.
So the next question is again an association. Is there is allergic rhinitis a risk factor for bronchial asthma?
That is a very interesting question. A lot of studies came up early which felt that if you treat allergy in early phase, you may be able to prevent asthma. Of course, those hypotheses were not really substantiated by enough scientific evidences, but it will definitely improve quality of life in your patients. In the sense, if you pick up allergy in very early stage in childhood and you put them on appropriate treatment, they may suffer less. Allergic reactions may go down, their asthma exacerbation may go down. And trust me, if you manage allergic rhinitis well, the asthma exacerbations are definitely less. And the more exacerbation, more are the associations with these disorders, like what I call it as asthma plus. That means you may have GRD, you may have psychological complications, you may have sinusitis and upper airway involvement. So if you address these issues, your asthma and allergy control may be better. Thank you.
One question that is related to what is the best treatment options for childhood allergic rhinitis?
Oh, interesting. But I request you, Sanjay, you give me the name of doctor and from where is he asking? You have that?
So presently they have received the Excel sheet, sir. So present.
Okay.
Maybe I can mail you. Yes, sir. Maybe I can mail you at a later time. We have received some live questions.
This stage, it would be very interesting to understand who are logged in from where. But then anyway, your question is, what is the best treatment for childhood allergic rhinitis?
Yes, sir.
The best treatment for allergic rhinitis is intranasal corticosteroids. But in children, it may be difficult to give intranasal corticosteroids. So if you're talking about a real young child, it may be wiser to treat them with antihistaminics because it would give them a faster relief. If the patient has got persistent allergic rhinitis, in that case, you have now approval for using Montelukast as well. If I'm not mistaken, I think it is 6 years onwards. So you can use Montelukast 6 years onwards. But when you have to use it for a perennial case of allergic rhinitis, please continue it for a longer time because children may not be expressive enough and they may not be able to complain about that nasal stuffiness, etc. You may have to go into details of history and you may have to continue this treatment for a longer time. The extension of this question could be a lot of friends and colleagues ask me, how long would you continue this treatment? Now, I believe allergy treatment is like your any other chronic illness treatment. It's like your blood pressure, it's like your diabetes, where if I take liberty, I may say lifelong. But allergy is known to wax and wane. It has its own exacerbation, it has got its own remission. It's like a rheumatoid arthritis patient. They may have arthritis flare and then they may go into spontaneous remission or they may go into remission with treatment. So what I do is, I like to put my patients on treatment for 1 year minimum. If I'm convinced about my diagnosis, if I've ruled out associated things, I know it is not nasal polyp, I know it is not infective sinusitis, etc. I have concluded that yes, this is allergic rhinitis. It is a perennial allergic rhinitis. I would continue treatment for 1 year. And the justification I have is, in India, we have distinct 3 seasons. Now it is no more distinct. You get rains even in December, but then yes, you have by and large 3 seasons. And all these allergic disorders are known to have seasonal exacerbation. So what I would do is I would put my patient on treatment for a year. If there is no episode of any allergy during this 1 year, I would try to de-escalate and I would try to stop it. But if my patient continues to suffer, I would continue treatment. So this is my way of treating allergic rhinitis. Thank you.
Thanks. So there is one query from Dr. Veena from Karnataka who asked how to distinguish between normal allergic vasomotor and viral rhinitis.
Oh, interesting question. Karnataka. Okay, infective exacerbations are relatively simpler to understand because you have a history of fever. You may have history of thick, rusty, yellowish, greenish, different color expectoration. You may have other systemic signs. If you investigate, this patient may have leukocytosis. They may be neutrophilic predominant. So by and large, this is how you would look at infective. You may have a history of infection in the family. You may have somebody else getting it, then they're getting it. They may have a prodromal phase where it was viral and then get secondarily infected. So those things. Infected again would mean viral infection also. Like we have seen, COVID infection may present only with upper respiratory thing. So viral infection also can present it. Only thing is your treatment would be different. Here you may not use antibiotics, and in bacterial you may use antibiotics. So that is infective. When it comes to allergy and vasomotor is mainly neurological. Allergy, you will be able to differentiate it by history. This patient will give you history of this kind of episodes happening multiple times in different seasons. There may be associated other system allergy like ocular allergy, there may be conjunctivitis, there may be skin allergy, there may be food allergy, there may be allergy history in family, there may be associated asthma. And the most important thing is they will tell you, if they take treatment with antihistaminic, etc., it settles down completely and immediately they get it. With change of season, they get it. So when you have this history and when you get chance to evaluate them, you will realize their sinuses are clear, there is no much sinusitis, there is no much polyps. You may have eosinophils which are elevated and you may have IgE which is elevated. So bacterial, and then this is how you look at allergic rhinitis. Thank you. That was a nice question, Dr. Veena.
Thank you, sir. So there's one query from Dr. Anu from Maharashtra. How do you place the role of bilastine versus levocetirizine?
Dr. Anu, I wanted this question actually because there's a lot of interest in bilastine off late. Yes, bilastine also is not a new molecule, but we have it in our country for more than 2 years now. I got chance to understand bilastine in little detail. Bilastine is, yes, good. It is truly once a day preparation, has got more than 24 hours of its action. I am yet to be sure in my clinical practice whether it is superior in its antihistaminic action when it comes to comparison with levocetirizine. So I may find it at par when it comes to its antihistaminic action. But when it comes to safety, yes, bilastine may have some edge over it. Bilastine has got least sedation. I would say it is truly non-sedating. It has got least drug-to-drug interaction in the sense with your QTC prolongation, with your tachycardias, with your associated comorbidities, you may use bilastine safely. When it comes to renal and hepatic insufficiencies, your compromised patients, and if you have to use antihistaminic, bilastine may have some edge over it. But when I say this, I don't remember any patient in last 25 years where I had to stop antihistaminic for want of side effects. In the sense, in any patient, I don't remember anybody getting QTC prolongation because of antihistaminic that I'm using. I don't see anybody having any cardiac complication because of this. Yes, you may see some drowsiness. So whatever levocetirizine, even if we talk about, it is non-sedating. Still, you may see a lot of patients getting sedations with this. And I'm sure, true with even fexofenadine. You have used fexofenadine extensively in your practice, and you will come across those patients who have a very low threshold for drowsiness or this with fexofenadine. Though it may have approval for even use in pilots, but in individual cases, you may have drowsiness happening or sedation happening with fexofenadine. So in children, when you have to use it, I don't see any great advantage between these two when it comes to its effect. When it comes to safety, yes, maybe. So say if I have to use in a new patient, somebody who walks into my cabin for the first time, who has got tachycardia, who's got some cardiac issue, who's got some renal compromise status, who's got some liver compromise status, maybe my choice would be Belastin. But when it comes to any otherwise walk-in patient, my choice would be levocetirizine. Now, when you choose, there are so many things that you would consider. One is the availability of that molecule in your area. The cost of therapy, you will also look at cost. I mean, I'm sure you would know that Montelukast being, the levocetirizine being a molecule in use, and a lot of us have used experience extensively over 2 decades. The price is really reasonable when you compare it with Belastin. So my choice would probably more for levocetirizine in that situation as well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So on similar lines, there is one query related to antihistaminics. So do we need to change antihistaminics or can be given for a longer duration, and how long can they be given?
Lovely question. Who's this now?
So these are the pre-registered questions, sir. So we have during
yeah. The question is, sorry, I missed that question. What did you say?
Do we need to change
do we need to change antihistaminic? This is a very interesting question. You know what happens is, a lot of dermatologists, when I see, have a habit of prescribing 2 antihistaminics. They have a habit of prescribing 3 antihistaminics for that matter. I have not come across a situation where you have to probably, change antihistaminic. You may updose antihistaminic. So what you do is, though it is not happening very common in practice, you may increase the dose of antihistaminic. There may be a situation where you may find one antihistaminic better than the other one in some patients. So what I would suggest is, say you have a patient on, for example, say Belastin, for example, you have a patient on Belastin 20 milligrams, and you feel this patient's allergic symptoms are not under control, you may upgrade. I mean, you may up titrate, you may updose this molecule, you may give 40 milligrams of it. You have patients on, say, levocetirizine, 5 milligrams, and you see patient is not doing well, you have an option of increasing the dose. But you must remember, when you increase the dose, the sedation also increases. When you increase this, there may be drowsiness which is associated with this. So whenever you up dose, you may have to look at the side effect profile. And second thing is, when your need goes up, always question your diagnosis. Be sure of the diagnosis.
Thank you, sir. So the next question is from Dr. Manimala from Tamil Nadu. This is related to prevention. For prevention of next episode, what do you suggest? Intranasal corticosteroids or Montelukast levocetirizine?
Very good question. Prevention. By and large, prevention would mean you need to put them on the right treatment. You have to maintain the right treatment. In the sense, your patient presents to you, say he comes to you in your OPD and you put them on treatment. Don't be in a hurry to stop this treatment. You would continue this treatment for a long time. You can imagine this patient's eosinophils are 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever. You can imagine this patient's IG levels are high. So this patient's IG normally you say 100, 150 different labs. If this patient's IGs are going to be 300, 500, 700, 1500, and that IgE cannot normalize with your 5 days of antihistaminic, cannot normalize with your 7 days of Montelukast. You need to continue it for a long time. Again, Montelukast is not a drug of choice for acute worsening. Though we use it, it does not give you relief in acute worsening. So you have an acute attack of asthma, Montelukast takes time. You have an acute attack of allergic rhinitis, it takes time. I would recommend you to continue it for at least 4 to 6 weeks when you initiate treatment like this. Once your patient is fine, say you put your patients on Montelukast and levocetirizine combination for allergic rhinitis, and patient is doing well. Once this patient does well, and if there is no nasal stuffiness, no nasal discharges, you may stop the levocetirizine part and continue Montelukast for a longer time. Some of this does not happen in practice. In my opinion, we are overusing antihistaminics. We may not need that much of antihistaminic, but Montelukast probably used for a longer time brings about better improvement. So what I do is, I would put them on antihistaminic and Montelukast combination. After about 4 to 6 weeks, when I feel patient has got symptomatic relief and their VAS score, if your habit of doing VAS score, if VAS score has come down, it is less than 5, I remove the antihistaminic part of it and continue only Montelukast. And I prefer to continue Montelukast for 1 year, as I said. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So the next question is from Dr. Uma from Karnataka. Are there any investigations that would help us to predict the progression to asthma in future in an allergic rhinitis patient with no breathing problem at present?
Yes, one must do full allergy workup. As I always believe, all patients of allergic rhinitis will have underlying asthma which is undiagnosed because patient may not be really aware of it. Patient may have very milder symptoms and may take that for granted. Okay, this much of deficit could remain with illness. I would want every patient of allergic rhinitis to undergo a PFT, and I would want every asthmatic to undergo a nasal evaluation by allergy specialist or ENT specialist, or even you could do that. The minimum investigation that I generally do for patients is do their routine biochemistry, look at their hemoglobin, look at their eosinophils, look at their IgE level, look at their metabolic parameters, diabetic, hypertensive, whatever. Do chest X-ray for sure, do paranasal sinuses X-ray for sure, and do their lung function for sure. So I would recommend this many things minimum: eosinophils, IgE, XHS, XAPNS, and PFT for sure. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So I know we are out of time, sir, but we'd like to take one last question. It is a combination of multiple questions related to a combination of Montelukast plus levocetirizine. When do we initiate this combination? What would be the right dosing, and how long can we continue this combination?
Okay. See, you have a patient coming in to you. Generally, this patient would come to you when they have probably exacerbation of that allergic symptoms. As a family physician, you get, in my opinion, you get less chances to see them when they're in their relatively stable state. But I would want you to probably encourage that kind of practice where patients come to you for routine follow-up, like what they do when they come to us. So what I wish is, when this patient come to you in acute stage, you may treat them with oral steroid, you may treat them with combination of intranasal corticosteroid, Montelukast, levocetirizine, whatever you prefer. Once this patient is fine, you will your first intention should be to get rid of systemic steroids if you have used it. If you've not used it, you will maintain this patient on intranasal corticosteroid, Montelukast, and levocetirizine, or any antihistamine that you like. Now, when patient comes down in a stable state, when he's asymptomatic, when his VAS score is almost less than 5 or whatever, is not really suffering much, that is the time you will have to take your patient into partnership. You will have to ask them about their preference for treatment. At that stage, you could probably choose between two: only intranasal corticosteroids or only Montelukast with levocetirizine. If your patient understands well, and if your patient is compliant enough, you can give them intranasal corticosteroids, and that would take care of allergic symptoms in most of the situation when they have only nasal allergy. But when you're looking at multiple allergies, say your patient has got nasal allergy with some allergic rhinitis as well, when you have nasal allergy with some ocular allergy as well, when you have allergic rhinitis with asthma, and patient is already on inhalers for asthma, your choice should be Montelukast with levocetirizine or Montelukast with antihistaminics. You would continue this combination, as I said, for minimum 1 year. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sir, thanks for taking all the questions and also explaining all the details with the case study. I believe this your presentation as well as the Q&A would have helped all our audiences in managing the patients with rhinitis in a better way. With that, on behalf of Sun Pharma, I would like to thank Dr. Agamura sir for sharing their enormous experience and providing valuable practical experience which will help us all take better and effective rhinitis patient care. Also, before we end this session, I would request all our audience to give the feedback survey which is available on your screen. And at the end, I would like to thank our entire team involved in this program, including the backend team, for all their kind support in making this event possible. Thank you once again. And
Sanjay, before you end, I must also thank you for giving me this platform to connect to those 1,000+ doctors from Karnataka, from Maharashtra, from wherever they connected. I must thank all of you for sparing your valuable time to be there on a working day evening. This speaks about your commitment to allergy. And I'm sure with this commitment, treating allergy would not be difficult. Thank you all. Thank you, Sanjay. Thanks the entire team, Sun Pharma. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining. Have a great day.